Hello, welcome to Gut Tales. I'm Emma, and today we are going to explore the difficult topic of if IBD impacts your mental health. And the answer is, drumroll please, yes. Unfortunately, studies suggest that IBD patients suffer from depression, roughly 20 to 40% depending on the study. What they found is that our symptoms are difficult to deal with, and sometimes we don't know how to talk about it. Living with IBD may cause withdrawal or depression because we oftentimes have to run to a bathroom 8 to 20 times a day or more. We may have to have our colons removed. We feel isolated. We once were able to do whatever we wanted. We could go to movies. We could go to restaurants. We could eat mostly without, despair. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. Our whole world just stopped. In my instance, I had just graduated from college. I was at the job I had worked my entire life for, and it seemed to be taken away from me in an instant. I felt like in an instant, my entire life stopped, and I couldn't control anything. And it led me to feeling really depressed. I felt so overwhelmed. I felt like none of my friends or family understood what was going on. I truly felt alone. And on top of that, my husband had to deploy for 7 months. It was so rough, and I was alone. So one of my friends who knew I was going to be, home alone for the holidays had asked me, hey, do you want to come over to my family's house for Christmas dinner? I knew her family. I loved her and her family. She was my college roommate. I said, yes, I'll go to your house for Christmas. And on Christmas Day, I couldn't bring myself to get off the couch. And it was so depressing, and I felt so alone. And if I would have just reached out to her at the time and said, hey, I'm feeling really down. Hey, I'm having to go to the bathroom 8 to 14 times that day, probably. Bloody bowel movements. It was out of control. I couldn't really eat anything. If I would have just communicated with her, I know she would have understood. However, I was so embarrassed by my symptoms that I didn't even let her know I wasn't coming. She calls me several times. In hindsight, I can't believe that I did this. It's still hurtful to this day for me, and that happened 17 years ago. And she now understands, her family now understands, but I denied myself the ability to be loved by her and her family because I was so depressed. In hindsight, that should have been the first idea to me that perhaps I was suffering from depression, but I didn't recognize it at the time. And so my whole point of making this video is for you all to realize that oftentimes our mental health is neglected when we are diagnosed. Very rarely will a gastroenterologist say, you are now diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease. You have either ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, maybe indeterminate colitis. If they're not sure if you have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, they'll call it indeterminate. But they won't say, here is a referral to a dietitian who specializes in inflammatory bowel disease. Here is a referral to a mental health care provider who specializes in inflammatory bowel disease. And oftentimes, our mental suffering goes not cared for, and it is so overwhelming. And this is true for so many autoimmune disease patients. There was an interesting study I was reading about length of stay for hospital patients with IBD, comparing those who are depressed to those who aren't depressed. And sadly, those who suffered from depression ended up even having to stay longer in the hospital. They had a longer length of stay. And so mental health cannot be looked over. It can't be denied. It can't not be addressed. And so we have to realize that there is nothing wrong with seeking help. If you need to get help because you are feeling sad, you are feeling depressed, you don't want to get up in the morning, I get it. Getting a diagnosis of IBD and not being able to control your bowels, being very sick, not being able to eat food, not being able to enjoy life, it is overwhelming. And an IBD diagnosis, especially in moderate to severe disease, can make us feel like our whole life has just stopped. And I was so depressed that at one point in my life, and I didn't even recognize this depression, but I was so depressed that there was a time where I was close to just ending it all. And the one thing that truly saved my life, and I swear he was sent to me from above, it was, he was just an angel, was my dog Caesar. He was a German Shepherd. I was at my wit's end. I was depressed. I felt like nobody understood me. I couldn't control my bowels. I had lost so much weight. My friends and family didn't understand. My husband was still deployed, and I felt so alone that I thought, why am I even here? I worked so hard, my entire life to go to the school I wanted to go to set me up for the career that I wanted to have. I made it into the school. I graduated, and less than a year after graduation, when I was at my dream job, I got sick, and there was literally nothing I could do about it. It was so overwhelming. And then you tack on not being able to enjoy social situations, not being able to go out with friends, family, not being able to talk about your disease in many cases because you're embarrassed, and it may drive you to feeling super alone and depressed. And I was at that point, I was at my wit's end. I was 23 at the time. I didn't even think I was going to live to 30. I thought for sure that the German Shepherd who saved my life would also outlive me. And it was overwhelming, but he saved my life. I fell to my knees. I cried, and his fur was like matted in my tears, and he just licked all the tears off my face. And I realized there is more to this life. There is more to me than this diagnosis, and I am going to empower myself and do what I can do to make the best of this situation, because at the end of the day, life is a gift. Even if you have a diagnosis of IBD, even if you have a diagnosis of some debilitating autoimmune condition, life is worth it. And so I often think, if I would have ended it at that point in my life, what would I have missed out on? And at that time, I wasn't even, the doctors didn't even think I would be able to have kids, right? So what did I miss out on? Well, a job that I thought was my dream job, and my life turned out really to be futile. It wasn't very important. At the time, it seemed like a big deal to me, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, that was just a point in time. I've had 2 children. I've learned so many things. I got passionate about nutrition science, and now I'm on the track to be an IBD-specific registered dietitian. So many things, so many beautiful things have happened since that moment when I thought my life was over. And so even if you think that there is no sunshine and you are caught in the darkness, know that you will overcome at some point. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be a year from now, but at some point you will get there. But will help you get there faster is if you get mental health care. If I would have realized the symptoms of my depression, I would have got help a lot sooner, and I would have been able to deal with my overwhelming feelings. And so again, if you are finding yourself withdrawing from your friends and family, if you are finding that you feel like nobody understands you, if you feel like you can't talk to anybody, if you don't want to get up in the morning, if you feel like nothing is worth living anymore, then these are all clues to you that you must reach out to a mental health care provider, and that is okay, because there is nothing wrong with that. They will help empower you. They will give you the tools that you need to get through this difficult diagnosis, because IBD is a very difficult diagnosis and people don't talk enough about it. So know that you're not alone. It's okay to feel sad. Life as you knew it changed in what seems like a blink of an instant. One colonoscopy and then boom, oh my gosh, I've received this diagnosis. Whoa. But know that you're not alone. There's a whole community of IBD patients that are here to support you. In your local area, there should be some IBD-specific support groups. I know here in the US, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has support groups. There are mental health care providers that can help you navigate through these dark times. But no matter what, know that you're not alone. And do not do what I did, and don't not show up for Christmas dinner or holiday dinner or the birthday party dinner or whatever it is because you feel so depressed. If you notice that you're withdrawing from family and friends, again, reach out to a mental health care provider. There is nothing wrong with that. Many of us are suffering in silence, and the more we talk about it, the more we get help, the better off we are setting ourselves up for the future. I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know struggles that you've all experienced. I would love to talk about it. I love interacting with you all. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I love, again, interacting with you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care.